Everyone knows that cybersecurity is a hot button issue these days. But most people think it is the realm of government actors, large businesses, political parties, and the big dogs that are out there. It's actually not true. Those are just the things that are making the headlines. The fact of the matter is that cybersecurity is a significant problem for the small to mid-sized business market. In particular, the field that I work primarily with, law firms, it is an issue for the small to mid-sized firms. So my goal here today is to talk about, with it being a new year, what does 2017 have in store with regards to law firm cybersecurity? I'm going to talk about 5 myths, 5 top threats, 5 things that you can do, and we're also going to talk a little bit about legal ethics. So a little bit more about me. I wear a couple different hats, and I've got a couple different past lives that have all led up to where I am today. Before law school, I actually practiced computer risk management at Arthur Andersen, and that was back focusing mostly on Y2K, but we also did some security work and penetration testing even back, a long time ago. I decided I wanted to go to law school. I decided that I wanted to be a tax lawyer. And then I subsequently realized after doing that for several years that I didn't want to do that anymore. While I was at a small tax litigation boutique, I hired a company to come in and do a technology refresh and a legal application installation, and that company is SpliceNet. And I hired them to come in, and I thought they did a really good job. I met a gentleman named Jim Gast, who you're all going to meet later on, and he and I, we got along pretty well. After I left the practice of law full-time, I reached out to Jim and said, hey, I want to do what you do. At the time, it was mostly software consulting, legal applications, infrastructure work. But as things have changed and become more and more security focused, we've changed along with that. So what I've done for the last several years is focus on the cyber and the tech in specifics in the legal vertical. So that's really where I live. And so for the small to mid-sized firms, which is the bulk of what I represent, cybersecurity is what I do. So I'm really well positioned to speak on these issues. Here's the challenge we face as lawyers. Everyone knows that technology changes very rapidly. And anyone that knows anything about the practice of law, they abhor change. They move at a glacial pace. Lawyers are not the most friendly to say, all right, let's quit doing it this way, we're going to start doing it a whole new way. So we have a major challenge between a fast-moving field running headlong into a field that moves at a very slow pace. And what's happening is the practice of law has fallen way behind the times. And this has made them a target. When it comes to cybersecurity, you need to engage on 3 different levels. Okay, and this is all overview here. You need to understand the legal concepts behind cybersecurity. You need to understand the technical concepts. And you need to understand the business impacts. You don't have to be an expert in all 3, but you have to view all 3 if you ignore any of them. And most lawyers absolutely skip point number 2 and point number 3. They think that's someone else's problems. I've got news for you, that's not going to cut it going forward. So you have to understand all 3 of these. So today we're going to answer 4 questions. 1, how safe is your practice's operations? 2, how do you identify cybersecurity issues? 3, can we use cloud technologies in the practice of law? And 4, how does the duty of competence apply in today's tech-based legal practice? We're going to start with talking about the 5 primary myths that we see in the legal industry when it comes to cybersecurity. Myth number 1, I'm not a target. It's It's the big firms, big fish out there that they're going for. They don't care about me. I'm little. I'm off their radar. You're wrong. You are a target. The size of the firm itself is almost irrelevant. It's the size and the value of your clients and their data. That's what matters. And sometimes it may not even be the size of your client, but the size of the party that your client is doing business with. Take a transactional practice, for example. If you've got a transactional practice and you're on one end of an acquisition and you are being acquired by a much larger business, you might have valuable information related to that large business that could absolutely be a target to criminals. So don't think that just because your business size is small, that you're somehow immune. The fact is that small to mid-sized firms are being targeted. You might be small, your clients might be small, but that data might be very valuable. Some of the smallest businesses out there have some of the most important trade secrets and other intellectual property out there. I will tell you the one thing that does apply because you're small, you do not have the same dollars available to you that the big players have in order to secure their systems. So you have to be a little bit more creative. You have to be a little bit more discerning with how you spend your money and determining how you're going to fortify any cybersecurity weaknesses that you have. So you've got all the same exposure and a whole lot less budget. That's a big challenge that we have to overcome. So what do? What does the typical small to mid-sized practice do? Myth number 2, I've got antivirus. I'm good. You can substitute any one of these, okay? You could take the word antivirus out and you could say, I've got a firewall. I'm good. I've got a firewall. It keeps people from the outside from getting into my network in the first place. I mean, it was a really expensive one from Best Buy, you know? I mean, it's really big. It's big on the shelf, so I mean, it's got to be a really good. No, okay? None of these technologies in and of themselves are going to be enough to protect going forward. These criminals are getting they are very clever, and they're consistently evolving. No single technology will protect you 100%. Therefore, you must take a layered approach in your security defense. You must have multiple technologies that are protecting you at different levels, and you need to use them in concert. So here's a very small list of things that, in my opinion, are absolutely required. And if you don't have all of these, you've already got significant holes in your security. You need to have that antivirus that most people think is all you need and they think is good enough. You need to have anti-malware, which is similar, but it is a different technology and a different security function. You need to have spam filtering. You need to have antivirus at your email gateway. You need to have antivirus at your gateway, which is the fancy way of saying firewall for those people that might not understand some of the terms I'm using. I'll try and use as, friendly terms as possible. You should have a unified threat management system that provides audit logging, intrusion logging. You should have all of these things, and you should have a solid, reliable, and tested backup solution. If you don't have all these things at a minimum, you've already got gaping holes in your security. So to think that one piece of technology protects you is just flat out wrong. Myth number 3, everybody thinks it's some shady guy in a basement somewhere with a hoodie. I mean, and this is the picture that you see on the internet all the time. The guy at the keyboard with the hoodie on, the dark, shadowy figure. The fact of the matter is, the external users, they're not your primary threat. Remember that an external user has to first gain access to your systems, gain access to your data, and then do something malicious with it. There is a much riskier group of people out there than external hackers. And those are the people that you allow to log in and sit at your systems every single day because you've already taken away the first obstacle. You've already granted them access to that data. You have taken out all of your perimeter defenses and said, here you go. Here's the goods. Now I'm going to trust you, a person, with all my stuff. Now that person can turn around and they could act either maliciously or just negligently. A lot of these breaches that occur are not because somebody is, I'm going to get back at my employer. It does happen, don't get me wrong. A lot of it happens because, let's face it, most people don't understand what they're doing when it comes to technology. They're not properly educated, and we've made it too easy for them to, send this data out. So don't think for 1 second that it's the shadowy figure in a basement. It's John in accounting. It's Sally in HR. These are your biggest risks. Myth number 4, cybersecurity is an IT issue. This is what we hear all the time. People bring us in and they say, hey, Dave, we need to have our cybersecurity taken care of. Will you do that for me? Nope. No, I mean, I can implement any technology that you want. But what do you need done? What data do you have? What are your business risks? What keeps you up at night? What's going to take your business and ruin it tomorrow? These are C-level issues. These are executive-level issues. And if you don't assess the business impacts to your firm as to what a cybersecurity breach would cause, a data breach would cause, trying to push that off on IT and make that their responsibility and try and say, wash the hands, hey, my computer guy screwed up when that breach happened, not good enough. It is a business issue and you need to treat it as such. In particular, what's going to happen here is when that breach happens, you can push it off on IT. But you will lose money, you will lose freedom, because you're going to have the government breathing down your throat at that point. And you're going to lose consumer trust, which as a lawyer, if you lose the trust of your clients, you're done, you're dead. Close up shop. In particular, the business decisions that I like to focus on, and I just want to touch on this real quick. Your IT group cannot work until you've performed a first level analysis where you decide what risks are out there and decide what you're going to do about them. You generally have 3 options. You can choose to mitigate risk. That's the only time that you involve IT. You shift risk. That's where you involve insurance. Or you accept risk. And that's where you say, you know what? We understand the risk is there. We're willing to take the chance. Notice that only one of the 3 actions are an IT action. Myth number 5, I'm a lawyer. Not I'm a lawyer, but the myth is that you're just a lawyer. That's not true. You're not just a lawyer, you're a business owner, and you need to start thinking like one. Even if you are employed at another law firm, even if you're not an owner of that law firm, you need to think of yourself as running a business. You represent clients. You are serving their business needs. You are a business person, not just a lawyer. You're not just a lawyer, you're a possessor of valuable information. People want data. They want names, they want numbers, they want business transactions, they want anything that they can find. You hold that. You're given it by your clients. You're not just a lawyer, you're a trusted confidant to those clients. They're freely giving you stuff that they're not going to give anybody else. And they're trusting that you're going to protect it. So just say I'm a lawyer, I'm not an IT guy, is not good enough. And the fact is, you're not a lawyer, you are a target. So understand that. And hopefully everybody's a little bit scared right now. And I always like to get a little doom and gloom at the beginning. And I think that it's smart to do that because this is the real world. These things are happening. These law firms are being targeted. So what are we going to do about it? Before you can take any steps, you need to understand the threats that you're going to face. Now, This is I'm only going with 5, but these are the top 5 that I see going forward over the coming year. There are a lot more than this, but I want to talk about these 5. Threat number 1, ransomware. Does anyone in here not know what ransomware is by this point? Okay, well, if there's anyone out here, that's watching the stream that might not know what ransomware is, it's quite simply the act of somebody gets a piece of malware that comes in and it locks your data and basically says, hey, you don't get your data back, it's going to be scrambled and you can't access it unless you pay a ransom. In theory, you pay the ransom, they unlock your data, and you can get back to work. There is no guarantee that this is going to work. And ransomware has been growing. 2016 was a huge year in ransomware. There was over $1 billion in financial losses in 2016 because of ransomware. That's a huge dollar amount. Think about that for a minute. And think about how many businesses this has hit when the ransom generally runs about $200,000 to $10,000 a pop. But all it takes is one person clicking on one link, and now you've got this ransom, and they push you. And it has to be paid by Bitcoin, which I don't know if anybody here has ever tried to obtain Bitcoin, but that is a challenge in and of itself. 2016, most of the news, most of the headlines when it came to ransomware had to do with the healthcare industry. There were a lot of high-profile ransomware cases for hospitals, doctors' offices, where entire IT departments of hospitals, their entire electronic health record systems were taken offline, and basically said, oh, by the way, you can't get any of your stuff back unless you pay $10,000, $20,000. So that was the headline grabber, but I can tell you from experience, from having seen it, from having read it, there were a lot of law firms that also got hit with ransomware in 2016. And guess what? As long as it's financially profitable for the people doing it, it's going to keep growing. So don't expect this to slow down. Of all the people in this room right now are watching, at least 20% to a third of you will have a ransomware scare at some point this year. Threat number 2, phishing and spear phishing. Let's talk about what that is. So here's how I like to explain it. You've got phishing, and this is the act of trying to get sensitive data from somebody by tricking them into giving it to you. So you receive an email from your bank. Hey, there's been some unusual activity on your account. We recommend that you log in. We recommend that you change your password. Click on this link. You click on the link. It takes you to the web page that looks just like your bank's web page. You put in your username and password in order to log in and change your password. And you did it, nothing really happened. What you don't realize you just did is you actually went out to another website purposely designed to look just like your bank's website, and you just emailed your username and password to your bank website to some third party, which immediately gets stored, turned around, and sold on the dark web. Happens all the time. That's phishing. That's on the rise. And these people put a lot of effort into writing emotionally charged emails to, it becomes very hard not to click that link and thought, oh my gosh, this bad thing is going to happen. PayPal just emailed me that there's this transaction from this place that I actually do. I was here a couple weeks ago, but I haven't charged anything there. They make it seem very legitimate. Spear phishing is slightly different. Spear phishing is more about trying to obtain records from people. It's targeting an individual person, whereas phishing is a little bit broader scoped. Try and see what's out there. Spear phishing, I'm going to go for this one particular person. I'm going to try and get information from this person. You'll see this a lot with people that work in positions that have a known access to sensitive data, people in HR, people in accounting, people in payroll, groups like that. You'll oftentimes, and if you pay attention, we're heading into tax season right now, so you're going to see a lot of instances where people fool payroll and HR people in just sending W-2s. Oh, hey, I need you to send me over everybody's W-2 so we can double check something. Oh, I'm sorry, here it is. So you just sent out every employee's W-2 to some third party because you got tricked into sending it.
you're going to start seeing a lot more of that happening as we head into W2 season. Finally, we have this concept called whaling, and this is what most people have heard of fishing and spearfishing. A lot of people have not heard of whaling. It's the exact same thing as fishing, but you're going after whales. And I think that this is important to understand that lawyers are targets for whaling because the bad guys, technical term, they understand that lawyers have really important information. They are whales. They are high profile. So you'll find that people engaged in whaling will go after senior executives, people in trusted positions, things like that, lawyers, doctors, stuff like that. And it is just a fact of the matter that a lot of times the most senior folks in a business sometimes are also the most senior folks in life and might not have the same level of tech savvy that some of their junior counterparts might have. So not only are they in a higher trust position, but oftentimes they might have a lower level of ability to protect themselves. Threat number 3, the Internet of Things. Hopefully everybody has heard of the Internet of Things. For those of you that haven't, this is all the little doodads and gizmos in our lives that are talking to each other. These are all of our Nest thermostats, our smart thermostats, our smart beds, our smart light bulbs, our web cameras, our DVRs. I have Amazon Echoes all throughout my house with Alexa, and I talk to her, and she hears everything that I say in my house. Now, supposedly, she only listens when I say Alexa, but there was a case that I need to get a little bit more up to speed on, but there was a big murder case recently where Alexa played a big role in the evidence. So these things are dominating our world more and more. As the next time you buy a washer and dryer, you're going to have the ability to buy a smart washer and dryer. Next time you buy a car, you're going to have the option of buying a car. If it doesn't drive itself, you're going to have the option of buying a car that connects to your computer at home, connects to your home, knows how to communicate with your mechanic, with your house. All these different things. Well, with a billion different Internet of Things devices out there, some of them are woefully inadequate when it comes to the security that's put in place. So what happens is bad guys utilize these weaknesses. You might put that DVR box in your home, that webcam in your home, and a group of malicious actors can hack those devices, use those devices to carry out, crimes, and you never even know it, because as long as they leave that little function that you expect it to do, you would never see it. You don't log into your web camera. As long as you can hop on and see the video feed, you don't care everything else that's happening on there. And this is not just hype. I don't know if anybody remembers, I believe it was early November, a big chunk of the internet basically went down. And there was a company out of Massachusetts, Dime, and they're responsible for, and I don't want to get geeky here, but they're responsible for name resolution. Basically, when I say I'm going to go here, you're on your computer, I'm going to go here, it brings the here to you, all right? And what happened was a bunch of hackers took over a bunch of Internet of Things connected devices and turned around and used them to engage in an attack that overwhelmed Dime's systems. Dime could no longer process these resolutions, these name calls, these address finds. And all of a sudden, Twitter's down, eBay's down. All of these major sites go down and are completely inaccessible because of weak security on Internet of Things connected devices. This is going to continue. Threat number 4. This is now the second time I've talked about this. You're going to notice a theme here as we go through. Threat number 4, your end users. I want to look at it a slightly different way here. Your end users can break things in all sorts of ways, and you put everything in place and your end users will find a way to break it. But here are a couple key ways that we're seeing it happen a lot. Shadow IT. What is shadow IT? Shadow IT is the use of technology that's not approved by the business for accessing, using, working with, transmitting business data. The best example is you've got legal documents. You want them saved on the server. Somebody saves them in Dropbox. They might even have the best of intentions. Hey, I work from home a lot. I'll put Dropbox on this computer. I'll put Dropbox at home. I'll be able to get a lot more work done. I'm helping my employee. I'm helping my employer. You know, this is not always a malicious decision, but I hope that you can understand the challenge and the risk associated with end users choosing to use these technologies and store your potentially sensitive data in a system that you have no control over and oftentimes no idea that they're even doing it. That's why it's the term shadow IT. It's behind the scenes. You might not even know it's there. End users are often the targets of social engineering. Social engineering, and I can guarantee you, I can go and I can do this right now. I could go out, find a list of all the law firms that are at Amada. I could go out and I could start doing some recon on local IT companies. And I will come across some IT company that lists one of these law firms as their clients. I mean, we do it. We say who our clients are. Most businesses have a testimonial page. I now know XYZ company uses SuperTech. All I'm going to do is I'm going to find the main phone number for XYZ company, and I'm going to call up. Hey, this is Joe with SuperTech. We just got some really nasty looking alerts from your system. And remember, I know technology enough. I'm a bad guy. Not me, but you know, I know enough about this that I can say, hey, I got some alerts on your system. They're really suspicious. I need to remote into your computer and I need to check the event logs on your system. Is that okay? Yeah. What do you need me to do? Well, I want you to go out to join.me and I want you to put this. So far, everything. I mean, it's right there. Oh, they're from SuperTech. I know. I get invoices from them. Yeah, come on. Well, and I could do this. I have no doubt that I would have a success rate above 20 to 30% of doing this. And I would immediately be given access to whoever answered that phone's machine, and I'm on your network. At that point, I could install all kinds of bad things, access all kinds of data. That's social engineering. That's your users. That's them not understanding the risks themselves. Additionally, your users carry mobile devices. Is there anyone in here that does not have their email on their smartphone? No. That is just the idea that somebody wouldn't have that these days is crazy. Everyone has a phone, and everyone has their email on that phone, which means they have potentially sensitive data on that phone. Is there anyone in here that doesn't have a password on their phone? That can just turn it on? Okay. So right there, just, and there are more people that it might be an easily guessable password, there might be using biometrics. You lose your phone, and now that sensitive data is out there. You leave it in the back of a taxi, it's now whoever picks that phone up can just get right in and start seeing sensitive data. So, and given the unique style of mobile phones, they're very easily lost. I know that I've left mine, and I've always gotten it back, but I've been like, oh my gosh, where's my phone? So, new users are your threat. This is one most people don't think of. Threat number 5, regulatory pains. Now, we all accept that cybersecurity is a big threat. We all accept that that threat is growing. We all accept that somebody needs to do something about it. The problem is that we're seeing regulatory kickback at this point. If we think back to the early 2000s, around the turn of the millennium, we think back to things like the Enron scandal and whatnot, and we saw the kickback with Sarbanes-Oxley and how it spawned an entire industry, and people are still living with the repercussions of doing that. This is a very real threat that you're going to face as more government groups regulate cybersecurity. You're going to have more and more rules, policies, requirements. You're going to see the fines increasing. And so you're going to be living with these compliance issues long after the IT folks have felt like they've gotten a grip on things, and you're going to have overreach as well. So this is a very real threat. So what can we do to protect ourselves? I want to talk about 5 more things. Step number 1, you need to know the data that you hold, and you need to understand the regulatory requirements that are imposed upon you. The regulatory compliance rules that you have to follow are based on the type of data you hold. And in a law practice, you might hold a lot of different kinds of data. If you hold PHI, you could be subject to HIPAA as a business associate, and all of the rules and requirements that come along with it. If you hold tax information in certain situations, you could be subject to IRS Regulation 1075, which I don't know if anyone's ever had any experience with this. I'm currently working on a very big audit with 1075, and it is a beast of a security regulation. If you hold payment card information, you could be subject to PCI compliance standards. If you hold other personal information, you might be subject to the rules of the FTC, other trade groups. It really depends. But until you understand your data, know what you actually hold, you can't even begin to understand what regulations apply to you. So start by understanding what it is what you have. Step number 2, encrypt your data. This is not a silver bullet. Encrypting your data in and of itself is not enough. As I said earlier, no single step is 100% effective. However, encryption, remember I told you earlier, the bad guys, when you have ransomware, they'll encrypt your data, which essentially means they'll scramble it. You can't get to it unless you pay the ransom and they give you the key. You can also use encryption in a good way where you scramble it yourself and you retain the key. And unless somebody else obtains that key, they can't unscramble the data. If I had an unencrypted hard drive on anyone's laptop, I could pull it out, put it on my computer, and I don't need your Windows password. I can get to your data without that. It won't take me very long at all. You encrypt that same data, as long as I don't have that encryption key, I now can't get to that, even if I have the actual hard drive and I steal it physically from you and plug it into another computer. It's that scrambling technology. And in the newest version of operating systems out there, it's wizard driven, it's free, and anyone can do it. It's very simple to do. There's no excuses not to. Step number 3. I mentioned earlier, you have that choice between mitigating, shifting, or accepting risk. This is option 2, shifting risk. You need to understand, that's an important word, and obtain cyber liability insurance. Don't just go, oh, I'm going to go get a cyber policy, and Google cyber policy and choose the first thing that comes up. This is a very new type of insurance policy that's being provided by a lot of different sources. So you'll find traditional insurers are starting to offer cyber liability policies. Maybe it's built into a general commercial policy. Maybe it's a rider. Maybe it's a standalone policy. You're seeing specialty insurers that just do cyber policies. We actually work very closely with one particular group that they do cyber policies. Awesome policies. But most people in this room would never have heard of the company, but they're a very small group that caters to our industry for cyber policies. And then you've got your malpractice carriers. Almost every lawyer, I honestly don't know in Illinois if you're required to have malpractice insurance, but in many states you are, and even if you're not, most lawyers choose to carry malpractice insurance. A lot of times the malpractice carriers will include some sort of cyber policy. I know mine in Ohio, the Ohio Bar Liability Insurance Company, every insured attorney also has a cyber liability policy. It's not the greatest in the world. There are better out there, more comprehensive that you pay extra for, but at least there's something. But you have to actually read each of these policies to see what they give you. Don't just say, oh, I've got a cyber policy, because they can vary wildly on the premiums that are charged, the things that are covered, the responsibilities of the insured, as well as what is excluded. Scary example. I have heard a story of a company that had a breach. They had cyber insurance, and I'm holding the details here because that's what makes it interesting. And the insurance company denied the claim. Nope, we're not going to cover the breach. We have cyber liability insurance. Yes, yes you do. It was corporate data. Yes, yes it was. It was a corporate machine. Yep. I was working at home over VPN. Doesn't matter, home network, sorry. There was an exclusion in the policy that if the breach occurred, even if it was an encrypted VPN tunnel from a home machine to corporate data on all corporate-owned equipment, the exclusion said you were on a home machine, covered, denied. You have to actually read these things. Step 4, prepare and practice your incident response plan. We all remember fire drills from grade school, and they probably still do them even here. Because the time to figure out where I'm supposed to go when there's flames at the door is not when there's flames at the door. I need to know what I'm doing beforehand. The exact same thing needs to be done when it comes to cybersecurity. You need to have a plan. You need to have, what are we going to do when we have malware, when we have ransomware, when we discover that somebody has breached and hacked into our systems, when we realize that John in HR just emailed all our W-2s to somebody who we have no idea who it actually really was. We just know it was not where it should have gone. So now every employee's W-2s are out there floating around in the world. I'm not going to go through every one of these points. I can provide these to anyone that wants them. But the important things to have in any incident response plan is defining the data and the incident, as well as severity. And then what are you going to do given I have an incident severity level 1, 2, 3. If it's 1, I have to notify these people internally, these people externally. If it's a level 2, I need to I need to contact local law enforcement. If it's level 3, I might need to contact FBI, Homeland Security, groups like that. I might have to reach out to the IRS. Might make disclosures. I might have to reach out to Health and Human Services. It depends on the data. So I can't tell you what your plan is going to include because I don't know your data. I don't know what you're subject to. But you need to have this written down because you don't want to have the breach happen and then try and figure all this stuff out. The statistics show that people that have a documented incident response plan and practice it will have much faster turnaround time and generally have liabilities that are about 60% less than people that don't have an incident response plan and just react when that breach actually occurs. Not only do you need to have a plan, you need to test the plan. Just like the fire drill, you do dry runs of it because that's how you determine whether or not you've got gaps in the plan. So there are things called tabletop exercises where you'll bring the group of people together, the important people, the people that are required to act under your incident response plan, and you come in and you give them a simulated scenario. Hey, we just had the CEO lost his laptop, left it in the back of a taxi. What do you do? And you run through it. And you realize, oh, we don't know what to do here. We missed a step. Well, it's really good that you caught yourself now while you were doing the dry run instead of realizing that you'd missed a step in the planning process when the CEO actually leaves her laptop in the back of a taxi. So doing those testing is just as important as doing the fire drills when you were in school. Step number 5. This is my recurring theme. I told you I mentioned it twice. I'm going to mention it a third time. Educate your users. They are your weakest link. You need to take steps to educate them. And there's a bunch of different tools that are out there for educating users. You have to have training sessions. You have to have documented policies. You have to have documented procedures. You have to have your users review them and sign off on them. You have to test them. You have to test them with phishing tests. See which one of your users are the ones that are likely to click on those links to reset their passwords to their bank. And then you can give them a little extra attention. Same thing with security quizzes. You test a broad range of things, and there's a number of options out there for quizzing your end users, and it's very easy to do this. But with your end users being the weak link, you need to train them. I want to spend a couple minutes talking about the ethical issues in legal technology. Let me check my time here. Doing good. Issue number 1, the use of cloud technologies in the practice of law. First of all, there are a lot of different opinions as to what constitutes cloud. My favorite definition of cloud is from a Pennsylvania Bar Association ethics rule, where they basically said it's just a fancy way of saying it's not on your computer. It's a great way to think about it, actually. Now, I would probably modify that a bit to say it's not on your network, it's not in your building, it's not in your four walls. But the idea is the same. My emails aren't here on my computer. They're hosted on Office 365 or Gmail. They're on their servers, out there somewhere, but I know they're not here. My documents are being hosted in a cloud-based document management system. I know they're not on my server. They're out there. I don't exactly know where they are. They live out there, hosted SharePoint, something like that. I just know they're not here. I know they're not on my hard drive. If it's not here, assume it's cloud. Okay? General rule, using the cloud's fine. Like anything, there's a reasonable standard. So, if you're going to choose to use the cloud in the practice of law, generally, you need to take steps to ensure that you have to take a reasonable steps to ensure against inadvertent disclosure. And pretty much across the board, every ethics group has said, we're not giving you a bright line list of what is and isn't reasonable. We're going to give you some guidelines, but technology changes way too fast. And if I gave you a list today, in 6 months, it's irrelevant. So we get some guidelines. What are some of the general guidelines? What security measures are in place with the cloud provider to prevent outsiders from getting access to the data that's hosted there? Is this data backed up? Do we have it in multiple locations so that the failure of one location doesn't mean that the data becomes inaccessible? Where is that data located? Is it in the US? Is it overseas? Is it stored on a server in a country that doesn't have the same restrictions on illegal search and seizure that we do here? Or is it stored on a server where one day a government could just walk in and say, oh yeah, by the way, we're taking all the data that's on this box now, and there's nothing you can do to stop us. What do the service agreements actually say? Once again, it's kind of like when I was talking about cyber liability. Read the policy. Don't just click next, next, next when you're signing up for something. Actually read the policies. Read who owns, well, that's actually more. Read who owns the data, all right? What are the privacy policies? What are the confidentiality policies? Are they going to make a promise that they're going to give you reasonable access to your data? Or is the cloud provider going to say, oh yeah, by the way, we're going out of business in a week. And this has actually happened. People host their data up in the cloud and they go, oh yeah, we're going out of business and you got 2 weeks to download all your stuff. What if you have terabytes of data out there with the cloud provider and you don't have time? They shut the doors, your stuff's gone. Unless you've ensured certain reasonable access and taken other steps. Also bear in mind that certain types of documents have no business being in the cloud potentially. And I'm not giving any bright line answers myself, but intellectual property, trade secrets, stuff like that are so sensitive that it requires some extra thought process before you put those things in cloud storage, just because the heightened sensitivity and value of that data. Also, items that have permanent retention requirements, if anyone's involved in estate planning, a lot of jurisdictions have permanent requirements on wills. And so is that really suitable for cloud storage, or do we have to retain physical on-prem storage of these items? This is my favorite. This is the second issue and the one I'm going to close with, and this is the duty of competence. Now, every lawyer understands that they have a duty to be a competent lawyer. Part of your ethical responsibility is to, do these little things like understand the law, understand how to represent your client, be able to do your job. Several years ago, the ABA Model Rule 1.1, which is the duty of competence, was amended. And in the comments, they amended comment number 8. And I'm going to blast through most of it, but this is where it talks about what does it mean to be competent? You need to do things like continuing legal education, stuff like that. But it added the language to maintain requisite knowledge and skill, and lawyers should keep abreast of changes in the law and its practice, including the benefits and risks associated with relevant technology. This language was adopted verbatim by the state of Illinois in October of 2015, effective January 1st, 2016. Meaning that in the state of Illinois, and I believe 15 other states that adopted this verbatim, there is now a duty of lawyers to understand the technology that is used in the operation of their practices. You cannot stick your head in the sand and pretend like IT, technology is an IT problem. I don't have to know how to use it. So what does that mean practically speaking? I see three primary areas where technology and this duty of competence matters. One is in the day-to-day operations. Are you using technology in a way that benefits your clients? Let's take, for example, an attorney who says, and I know attorneys that pride themselves, I don't use email. I refuse to use email. If someone sends me an email, my assistant prints out that email and gives me the piece of paper for me to read. I'll mark it up and give it back to them to respond from my account. Is that an appropriate use of technology for an attorney? I have attorneys that resisted having email at all because they didn't want to deal with it. But their clients wanted to communicate electronically. You now have an obligation to make sure that you're providing technologies that allow you to represent your clients properly. Electronic discovery. This has been a big one. Electronic discovery is a 600-pound gorilla in and of itself. And most lawyers don't get it. The problem is now you don't have the ability to say, I don't understand e-discovery. Every single case that's out there has the potential of having electronically discoverable items. And lawyers have been smacked down and have been disciplined for not handling the e-discovery process properly. And they've been told by ethics committees that saying you didn't realize that this type of discoverable material was out there is no longer acceptable. If you don't understand electronic discovery and the electronic records and the ways to get them, what you should be looking for, you better get someone that does, because ignorance is no longer an excuse. And of course, cybersecurity, which I spent the bulk of today talking about. You cannot stick your head in the sand and say, cybersecurity, oh, it's not going to happen to me. No, it's a real threat. It's a technical threat. You need to understand what you need to do to protect yourself, and you need to take some reasonable steps to protect yourself. You cannot ignore it any longer. Here's what we don't know in every jurisdiction yet. What level of delegation is acceptable? How much of the technology does the lawyer have to actually understand? Is it enough to delegate to another person to report back to me that we've got adequate technologies in place? Can it be delegated to non-lawyers? Can it be delegated to third parties outside the firm? And what kind of control do we have to maintain over those delegated items? We also don't know what's going to happen as technology change continues to accelerate. As the field changes, we're going to see more and more new technologies. What's going to happen as AI takes over? How's that going to change our ethical duty of competence? We just don't know. That's trying to predict the future. What we do know is that you cannot ignore technology any longer in the practice of law. From the operational, the discovery, the litigation end, or the cybersecurity end. Turning a blind eye to it is certainly not allowed and is going to get you in trouble. And so you do need to be aware that these items are out there, that these issues present themselves, and they will impact you, and you need to be prepared to deal with them.